What's up, everyone? Good afternoon, and welcome to Shaw Locals Bears Insider Podcast. I am Kyle Nabors, along with Sean Hammond and Hub Arkush joining us here this afternoon. It's been weird, guys. I don't remember if last year was the first year or if it was 2 years ago, but this kind of I believe, Hub, you've referred to it in the past as a legal tampering period. It's just kind of a weird thing when these deals start leaking out. I mean, the TJ Edwards one leaked out seemingly minutes after 11 a.m. on Monday when this period started. It's now 3 p.m. Central Time here on Wednesday. The new league year has officially begun. Teams can start acknowledging these deals that they have in principle. And it's been a busy couple days for Ryan Poles, Hub. We knew that the Bears were going to be active in free agency. I've been definitely happy with the two linebackers that they've signed. Two guys that have a lot of upside still and playing at a high level, coming off good years. But I don't think it was the route most people expected the Bears to go coming in, that first kind of wave of free agency.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. I mean, I was hoping that they would be very cautious, and I continue to hope that they don't spend all the money this year. As much as they've made some big moves, they still have plenty of money to save for next year. It depends on who you get. But what I think is so interesting about this is you look at all five of these signings so far, and these are young players who've played very well, but are still building towards the peak point of their career. And that's obviously become a focal point for Ryan Poles. And I think it's a good one. And, Sean, I don't know what you think, but I'm really impressed with what they've done so far. I thought that the trade for the first round pick was certainly, fair return. I'm not going to say it's the greatest trade ever, but it's a good one. They got plenty for it. And then these free agent signings, which are more than I expected this quickly, all feel pretty good to me.
Yeah, Hub, I think the age thing is a great point. And you look at the age of these guys they brought in, you're looking at 25, 26-year-olds. They're not going out there and spending big money on guys who are over 30. And that just fits into Ryan Poles' vision for this team. They still have a long way to go. They're not going to necessarily be there next year, but he wants guys who are going to be competitive and be at the top of their game over these next couple of seasons, not just 2023.
Yeah, guys, everyone that the Bears have signed so far have been young, and you look at those linebacker position, those two spots, the TJ Edwards deal, fantastic deal for the Bears. I thought they got him at too cheap of a price. And, I figured that they were going to add another linebacker here in free agency. I thought it was probably going to be more of a veteran, though, on a short-term deal, some guy that they could, someone that they could count on, work kind of as that veteran leadership, and then be able to turn it over in a couple of years. I did not expect them to go out and spend that type of money on Tremaine Edmonds. That being said, Hub, I really, really like everything I've seen out of Tremaine Edmonds during his time in Buffalo. And is he not even 25 or not 26? I know
he's 25 now, and he will turn 26 at the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, what have you seen from Tremaine Edmonds, and is my excitement for him legit?
Oh, I think it is. This is a guy who is a Pro Bowl level linebacker, and to get that in free agency, and yes, they paid a lot of money, but not too much. He still is, I think, only the fourth or fifth highest paid linebacker in the league with this new deal, and to have him under contract this long it's very impressive. And I look at both of them, Edwards and Edmonds. And the other thing that I think people have to realize is Edwards comes from the NFC champion Philadelphia Eagles. Edmonds comes from the Buffalo Bills. These are two of the best defenses in the league, and these are two of the best players on those defenses. And I think, I don't know, Sean, I'm convinced that Edmonds made up his mind he was coming home. Edwards, I'm sorry, because otherwise I can't figure out how they got him as, I don't want to say cheap. $16 million is not exactly cheap, and he is young, but he was the leading tackler on the best team in the NFC, and they got him for 3 years for $16 million. He obviously was committed to coming home. And he may be one of those guys who never goes to a Pro Bowl, but is just a really productive player for a long time.
Yeah, Hub, I think that pairing made too much sense for both parties. Clearly he wanted to come home, and clearly the price was right for the Bears. And you're right. I mean, in my my free agency previews, I did not expect him to sign for that a salary like what he got with the Bears, and that's great for Ryan Poles. I was expecting him to be a little bit more money on the yearly salary, but obviously the Bears have gotten him at a good price, and you look at what he can do, and you look at what both these guys together can do. And Hub, you mixed him up earlier, and I'm going to do that a million times. Edwards and Edmonds.
I do it every single time.
Edwards and Edmonds. I got to check the paper. I'm doing it every time. But Tremaine Edmonds is just so long and lanky, and you watch him play in coverage, and he can swat balls down from all over the place. He's really, takes up that middle of the defense there, and can do a lot of different things for you. And you see why, when you go out and watch his tape and pull up video of him from last year and previous seasons, you see why Matt Eberflus wants those lanky linebackers, because he can really affect the game in a lot of ways with those long arms.
Well, Kyle, he's also not just long and lanky. He is possibly the best athlete, certainly one of the best athletes among linebackers in the league. And he's got the size, he's got the strength, he's got the production. I mean, both of these guys had over 100 tackles this year. And so, I think it's probably what we should have expected, Matt Eberflus trying to do. I mean, he's a defensive coach. He knows he's got to rebuild his defense, and he probably has the two leaders of this defense now for the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah, we knew that they were going to upgrade that linebacker position for Matt Eberflus. Like I said, I'm a bit surprised with the level of commitment, but when you're talking about players that are still ascending like that, Tremaine Edmonds, before this season, the one knock that I had really heard about him was his coverage skills, and you saw how much he improved those this year. I believe it was Matt Bowen. I was hearing on the Score earlier this week, and Matt is a wonderful, wonderful analyst that I trust very much. And, him talking about the ball instincts, the speed, the improvement in pass coverage that he's seen from Tremaine Edmonds, when Matt Bowen is heaping that type of praise onto a player, that usually means good things in my book.
Well, and I think you can add to that is that the coaches of both the Eagles and the Bills were we talked to these guys at the Combine. They wanted to keep these guys. They were adamant about how impressed they are by these two players. I haven't heard a negative from anybody. There were, as you point out, some concerns about Edmonds' coverage skills, but he's not going to be the primary pass coverage guy in the Bears defense anyway. And he did get much better at it than this year. And when you look at the production from Edwards this year, 150 some tackles, over 100 solo. These guys are incredibly active, athletic players, and they are 25 and 26 years old.
It's funny because there was some point, Sean, near the end of the season where we were discussing Jack Sanborn, and it's a natural, easy thing to do, particularly here in Chicago. Jack Sanborn, TJ Edwards, two local kids from the northern suburbs, both played linebacker at Wisconsin, both went undrafted. They're easy comparisons, but there was like Jack Sanborn, you see, and that's kind of the way Wisconsin always teaches their linebackers, right? Like they're not getting the best athletes. They're getting those kids that are so meticulously, in the zone when it comes to the reaction times and the way they're able to read football, read the football, that they just play quick. And you see that in both of those guys. And you combine the new two free agents with what we saw out of Jack Sanborn. And not only are the Bears improving at a position, Sean, but they're starting to a little bit. They have a long way to go. A lot of empty roster spots here, I realize. But you're starting to get a sense that this team is building a little bit of depth that they've lacked these last few seasons.
Yeah, I mean, that linebacker position has just catapulted up into one of their strongest positions in a matter of days. And, you go from thinking that Jack Sanborn could be a fixture of this thing to he's your third best guy. And that's great. When you're trying to build a team, you need a bunch of guys. You can't just rely on one or two. And that's an interesting, it's fun to compare those guys because Sanborn and Edwards, they're both coming from Wisconsin. They both went undrafted. You can kind of see like what you're saying, Kyle, like Wisconsin just has good football players. They might not have the best athletes at every position, but they find those guys who really love the game and can understand what's going on out there. And I think when you watch, all three of those linebackers play, they have a really good sense of what's happening out there on the field.
Guys, the other thing I think we have to point out, because I've gotten a lot of this on the radio this week and from some folks on Twitter and whatever, is that this is not about, hey, Jack Sanborn, undrafted rookie free agent, isn't good enough. We went and got better. Maybe Sanborn will stick around. Maybe he won't. These are three starting linebackers, each who have different specialties. You've got an off the ball, you've got an on the ball, you've got a run stuffer. Sanborn is the third starter. These are your three starting linebackers now. Hopefully they can all stay healthy. And this is where I want to add one other thing. I don't know if you guys are going to agree with me or not, but folks, everybody listening, be careful, okay? I mean, these guys are available for a reason. Their teams let them get away for a reason. May not be the right reason. May have just been cap space. There's all kinds of things that happen. These are good football players, and I'm really impressed by what Poles has done with these two moves. But they, again, are available for a reason. They have more to prove and more to develop. We're not making Ryan Poles the executive of the year quite yet. I hope. I'm not anyway, although, maybe he's working at it. We'll see what happens. So all we can do is describe for all of you who are with us right now, these are good moves by the way we measure these things on the first day of free agency. These are impressive moves because I wasn't sure that well, I guess there was a feeling from the beginning that the Bears were going to have Edwards, but getting Edmonds, I mean, depending on which of the experts you look at, he was a top 10 candidate among the top 10, available free agents. And I didn't expect the Bears to make a move like that. And yeah, they spent a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money for that kind of player. So that's what's impressive about this. Now we've got to talk about how much more work the Bears have to do because they got a ton left to do and what makes more sense in the draft and what makes more sense in the free agency. I think they're probably pretty much done in free agency at this point. I think now, you'll see a couple more signings, but these are going to be more, backups, more depth, more filling a spot here and there. With what they've accomplished, I think at this point in free agency, it's time to really start to focus on the draft now.
Definitely a lot more to dive into. Quickly want to make sure to tell everyone to go over to shawlocal.com. You'll find all of our content there. Sean has been doing live updates and posting content throughout this free agent period. He'll continue with that. How about have a column up later this afternoon or this evening? If you don't get to it tonight, it'll be there first thing for you in the morning on your commute. A lot of stuff coming your way this week. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Sean_Hammond, at Kyle Nabors, and at Hub_Arkush. If you guys are watching us live right now, you can watch us on YouTube. You can find us on any of the Shaw Local Facebook pages. Do us a favor if you are on YouTube, leave us a comment, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the page. It helps people find the show. It helps us join the channel. And if you are watching live, throw a comment or a question in the chat. It helps kind of guide us what you guys want to talk about. And to be completely honest with you, since it is the start of the new league year and the three of us who are covering this are sitting here on this stream, I'm not exactly paying that much close attention to social media right now. So if news does break, you guys are probably going to see it even before we do. So throw it in the chat. We'll talk about it and probably start panicking in our heads about how we got to get something up online. But with that, guys, I'm going to go back up to the top. My good buddy, Mike B, with a comment here, and I think it's a good place to start for where we go next. Because the Bears have to sign either an offensive or defensive lineman before the draft. Position doesn't even matter, but they need more contributors, and I don't want them reaching for needs on draft day. Hub, between the trade for DJ Moore and what we've seen so far in free agency, it certainly does feel like the Bears and Ryan Poles are going to be able to focus in on those lines. whether that is through free agency. I know the same gentleman, Mike B, had texted me this morning talking about potential trade partners and asking about, what could someone like DeForest Buckner cost down in Indianapolis, where they're in cap trouble and, in the middle of a rebuild or starting a rebuild, it appears. There's multiple routes the Bears can take, but I think you'd agree they definitely have to get much better at in both of those spots still.
Well, yeah, I agree, but we haven't even mentioned another signing that I really like, and DeMarcus Walker from the Titans. These are the kind of things that are popping up now that just because they weren't the number one guy on the list that nobody was paying attention to. But DeMarcus Walker has been in the league for a while. He was originally a high draft choice. He has some great skills. He's been up and down. He's had a bit of an up and down career, but he is coming off his best season, and 7 sacks for an inside defensive lineman is really productive. It's really good, and it's more than any Chicago Bear had this past season. So they have already added to the defensive line. You can't just go get everything, the first day or via free agency at all. Actually, I don't know if it would be the greatest strength. I personally think it might be, but the strongest position in this draft is the defensive line, at least in the high rounds, I think, especially still with those 2 second-round picks for the Bears. They're absolutely going to get more on the defensive line, but don't ignore DeMarcus Walker. It's not fair to him, and it's not really covering the team correctly. When we look at these other, I'm sorry, guys, my wife decided that she wanted to call in the middle of this. So at any rate, I just wanted to add, because I realized as I was reading Mike's question there, or thought, that to not include DeMarcus Walker in this group, it's another really interesting, potentially very good signing.
It kind of feels like to me, Sean, and I don't mean to tamp down on the DeMarcus Walker signing, because you are right, Hub. He's coming off a really productive year. He looked really good. For some reason, and maybe it's just because of how things went last year, but I just keep going back to Al-Qadim Muhammad and kind of that mid-tier defensive lineman that you thought could come in and be productive. I didn't expect him to be a superstar. I thought he'd be a above average NFL player, slightly above average NFL defensive lineman, and it kind of fell apart. And I guess my worry with the Walker signing, Sean, is that you are going to end up in another situation where you just spend money on a guy that's not effective enough up front.
Yeah, I mean, the Bears had to make some moves on that defensive line, and they had to come away with somebody here in this free agent period. I do think it's possible they could still look to add another piece on that defensive line, but I'm kind of with you, Kyle. I mean, I think DeMarcus Walker is a nice free agent get. I wouldn't expect him to come out here and be a 10 sack plus guy, but yeah, I mean, he's certainly a guy who's going to be a key contributor for your defense moving forward. And, I do think, the question also mentioned the offensive line too. I thought it was interesting, the reports coming out that the Bears were in on McGlinchey and seemed like it was maybe heading that way before the Broncos swooped in. That certainly tells you that there's some interest there at trying to improve that right tackle spot. But you kind of look around the league and McGlinchey's gone. Caleb McGarry signed last night. Juwan Taylor's gone. And I don't know that there's that guy that you want to spend big money on at that right tackle. You could, maybe convince yourself Orlando Pace is that guy.
Orlando Brown.
Not Orlando Pace. Or Orlando Brown. Is that guy. Obviously, there seems to be some questions about whether he's, left tackle, right tackle, whatnot. If the Bears signed him to be a left tackle, they'd have to move some pieces around. But I do think the Bears are going to still look to bring somebody in at one of those tackle spots, but I don't think it's going to be the type of name that's going to wow you.
Yeah, and guys, I think I don't want to be the one who bums everybody out, but it's just about reality here. The Bears right now are the worst team in the NFL. That's why the 3-14 Bears were able to have the number 1 overall pick and make the trade and blah, blah, blah. It isn't all going to get fixed this year. It just doesn't work that way, and so they have to keep doing good things. When you look at pick number 9 And whether they end up trading and drafting 5th or 6th, or trading down and drafting, 13th or 14th, or stay at number 9, I can tell you that Sean and I were traveling to Indianapolis, to the combine. Will Anderson was going to be there at number 9. His stock went way up, at the combine with the way he carried himself and performed, and of course the Jalen Carter mess, which we still don't know how that's going to play out. And then you look at some of these other players, like Tree Wilson, like Nolan Smith, like Lucas Van Ness. I mean, there are first and second round pass rushing defensive linemen all over the place, and the Bears' first pick is going to be one. I mean, unless the best offensive lineman in the draft is still there, and there's a very good chance that the best offensive lineman could still be there at number 9, or they could trade to 6 or 7 if they have to. So they're going to address all these things, and I think that what Poles is doing now is they've spent the last couple of months trying to figure out what's best to get in free agency, what's best to get in the draft, what can you get in both places. And so my message to everybody listening right now is, guys, just enjoy it. They're doing a good job so far. A lot's going to change over the next month and a half. And I understand why you're asking the questions, and I have no problem answering. I'm not being critical of anybody, but all we can comment on is what they've done so far. There's a few things, because of who we work with and who we talk to, that we know they're going to do, via free agency or the draft. But let's let some more time pass. Is it 3:00 yet? Yeah, it just became official 25 minutes ago. So this all just started 25 minutes ago, and a lot is going to change over the next couple of weeks.
Okay, a lot to unpack there. Let's start with. I'll throw this out here. This is how I'll go about it. Out of the free agents that have signed so far, I understood the interest in Mike McGlinchey. I think it was very smart of the Bears to back off when the price got to that range. I did not believe that a right tackle, and Mike McGlinchey's a nice player, don't get me wrong. I just thought that was an overpay by Denver. We'll get to Orlando Brown in a second here, but the only player that I was a bit disappointed was Draymond Jones signing in Seattle, the defensive tackle there. When I saw the contract that he was given, it was not what I expected for him to get. I thought that would have been a really nice fit for the Bears. What do you guys think, Hub?
Well, it's kind of an extension of what I just got done saying. Yeah, he's a good football player. I like him a lot. It would have been interesting. He doesn't fit the not personality. I don't know what word I want, but we're talking about the Bears signing young football players, just getting ready to reach their prime. Now you're talking about somebody who's in his prime, very good football player, and might be a good fit. But if the Bears aren't going to compete until 24 or 25, what is the fit there, and how much do you spend on it? And I think one of the most important things about everything that they're doing right now, stay young. Focus on the players you draft. Sign these young free agents, and if you get it right, if you're evaluating these guys properly, they could make a playoff run this year, is what I'm trying to say. I mean, it's not going to happen. I'm not predicting it, but getting to 500, it's not unheard of. They're not that far away. There's other young players on this roster already who are going to be much better football players, especially in the secondary. I kind of like some of the young talent that the Bears have in the secondary, both cornerback and safety. And maybe it's just me, guys, but I don't think the offensive line is as bad as people are making it out to be. It's not good enough, but they've got a couple guys who could be part of the future offensive line. So I couldn't agree with you more, Kyle. I mean, what was they paid for me? I wouldn't have paid it. Not if I was the Bears. I'm not saying
McGlinchey, that is, right?
McGlinchey, yeah. I'm not saying that they made a mistake. I'm just saying that to me, it just wasn't the right fit for the Bears. I mean, look at what they found in the 5th round at left tackle. Obviously, the Chiefs aren't keeping their left tackle, so for other people, if you're not sure if he's a left tackle or a right tackle. So this is all the stuff that you got to measure as you go through this.
So we haven't touched on Nate Davis, the guard that they brought in from Tennessee. Hub, what do you think that means for the Bears on that offensive line, and particularly at those guard spots? They had Cody Whitehair at left guard and and Tevin Jenkins at right guard for much of the season last year, except for maybe when they were out with injuries. How does Nate Davis fit into that equation?
There's a couple things there. First of all, I'm not going to say that Cody Whitehair won't be a Bear this year, but he definitely won't be next year at $14 million. And I think there's a good chance he won't be this year. And I think it's 12.4 or something like that. I mean, again, you keep playing with the salary cap space and you look at the next couple of years, and Nate Davis is a pretty good football player. And if he had stayed healthier, he would have cost a lot more. And I think the concern about him is that, he's not always on, in the health room or whatever, but he did miss some time this year. He has missed some time over his career. And I think that's what made him available. It's not a cheap price, but certainly wasn't overpaid the way McGlinchey was. And so, it's an interesting signing. And I think it is probably because they know they're going to need at least one more starter next year, if not this year, and he can do it. I mean, he's played well when he's been healthy, so I have no problem with that signing at all.
I think you alluded to it right there with they're going to need him this year or next year, and I believe what you're referencing there is Cody Whitehair, which the Bears are in no need to move on in terms of generating extra cap space right now, but he certainly is someone that's going to be on the radar when it comes to cap casualties, whether that is this offseason or next offseason. And you look at it with the Cody Davis signing, and you got. Yes, thank you. I knew Cody was wrong. I read Cody in the chat.
We're saying a lot of names today, so we're gonna mess some of these up.
So you're talking with Davis coming in. You had Tevin Jenkins excel at the guard position. You do have Cody Whitehair under contract. That's the first thing is one, you mentioned Davis has an injury history. Cody Whitehair has had a bit of an injury history in recent seasons. Tevin Jenkins obviously well documented these first couple of seasons, but you don't have a spot. If those are you only have two starting guard spots. Like, is there a possibility that we see Cody Whitehair, someone like that, slide inside to center again? Could we see Tevin Jenkins go out to right tackle? I mean, we don't know what the Bears' plan is.
Well, I think everything's on the table right now. But the other thing you got to realize about Whitehair is that if he's not already 30, he's going to be by next year. And again, that's not what the Bears are doing right now. And that's why it just feels like, I don't know that he's a better player, but Davis is a better fit for the Bears right now than Whitehair is. And that's why, and I hate talking like this about guys whose careers and jobs and their families and their income and all that. I don't think Whitehair is going to be with the Bears this year. It isn't consistent with the other moves that they're making. But we'll wait and see. They may want to take him to camp. They may want to see if they can get a fifth or a sixth round pick for him. Everything's on the table right now.
I could see either one of those scenarios playing out, whether that's cut him in the near future or take him to camp and see what happens with those three guys at the guard spots. I agree, though, that Nate Davis is kind of exactly what Ryan Poles talks about with his linemen. He's athletic. He can move. He's really good in the run game. And he's one of those guys who can swing out wide and get outside quickly. And that's exactly what Ryan Poles wants for his linemen.
Want to hit on Orlando Brown before we transition over, talk running back a little bit, and then get to some more questions. Want to hit on Jalen Carter. But Triple R said, how much before we reach the league cap minimum? Sean, I believe it was the Bears have about $44 million in cap space. You have to spend 89%. I believe the number is.
You have to spend 89%. It's a little more complicated because 89% over a 4-year period. So you can be under that in some years.
Yeah. I mean, and the Bears still have almost 30 roster spots. When you talk about they're going to draft 10 guys, obviously those guys they bring on rookie free or undrafted free agents are not big deals, but they're going to add a few more veteran guys, flyers here in free agency, maybe not another big name, but I don't think they're going to have any issue getting to that cap floor. The one big move that, is still out there, I certainly do not expect it to happen. CJ Williams popping in with afternoon, gents. Good to see you, CJ. The Orlando Brown thing is, we're still waiting to see what happens. I think it's clear with the way this has played out publicly about how Orlando Brown has wanted to be paid as a left tackle. He's looking for a lot of money. There's a reason he's still out there without a deal at this point. Hub, do you think someone's eventually going to cave and get it? Give him, I don't know. I wouldn't say a record-setting deal, but it's probably going to be close if he wants that left tackle money. I'm guessing he wants to be near or at the top of the market.
Well, I'm sure he does. And again, we have to point out free agency just became legal half an hour ago, and so do I think he's going to be the highest paid offensive lineman in free agency? I think he's going to be one of the top three, and the top three are all going to be close enough. What bothers me about him, and this is the way some of the people I've known over the years as GMs and coaches have looked at it. Others have not agreed with me, but what I focus on a lot with this is the Kansas City Chiefs just won a Super Bowl. The Kansas City Chiefs just had one of the better offensive lines in football, and they don't want him back. Or they want him back, but they don't want to spend the money on him. And so I don't want the Bears to spend the money on him either. It's just, there is going to be some really good tackles available in the draft. And the Bears are going to get one with one of those first three picks. I also, and again, we're all playing games with names, and I'm struggling with this year's left tackle, but I like him. I think the Bears. Yeah, I think the Bears already have their left tackle. And so what if he came in the fifth round? It's about how he played, and I think he probably has to get better blocking for the run, even as well as the Bears ran. But his pass protection for a kid, who a lot of people didn't even know was going to make the team, I was very impressed, and so I think they're in pretty good shape at left tackle. And right tackles are a lot easier to find.
I'll go a step further with Braxton Jones-Hub. Not only did I think he played well on the field, I thought he had the perfect mentality for it. Like that left tackle position, particularly when you're a young guy, you're going to get your ass kicked from time to time. And he did a good job of handling that, making adjustments. By the end of that season, he didn't seem like a rookie fifth-round draft pick. He seemed like a guy that understood the NFL game.
Guys, I want to make a point here because I think it's important and nobody is focusing on it. The fact that the Bears led the NFL in rushing is misleading because so much of it is Justin Fields and so much of it probably won't be repeated. But it doesn't change the fact that they led the NFL in rushing yards, and the offensive line has to get some credit for that. It didn't happen by accident. It wasn't all just Justin Fields being a miracle man. And so I just think that folks are underrating at least a little bit what the Bears already have on the offensive line. And I don't think they need that much to get enough to, as everybody ages and comes together, to have a pretty good group.
Where do we feel about, or how do we feel, I guess, about where they're at with that center position, though, Hub? We haven't heard anything about Sam Mustipher coming back. It seems like that might not be the case. Somebody in the chat mentioned maybe Cody Whitehair slides over to that center spot. What do they do with that? Where is that on their list of needs?
Yeah, Sean, I talked to one of my guys yesterday who told me that he thinks that maybe Nate Davis's best position, and I'm not saying that's what they signed him for, and he hasn't played it, but there are some who think he can. I think again, center is not usually a position people think a lot about in the draft, but there are some good ones. And this is really embarrassing for me as a Michigan alum that I can't remember the kid's name, but he's one of the best college centers I've ever seen, and he's going to be there when the Bears pick in the 50s or 60s. And so there's just a lot of things that they can do at the position. But the thing I'd be interested to be able to ask Ryan about, which he's not going to be able to tell me yet anyway, but I'm not at all convinced that they're not thinking that they at least have an option of considering Davis there. And maybe, everybody is still here for one more year and he moves in there. I don't know. It's a possibility.
One thing, Sean, are you still with us? Yeah, I think you broke up for a second.
Sorry, I think my I'm coming in and out a little bit here on the.
Okay, that's all right because I can. The one thing that I really find intriguing, or one of the things that I really find intriguing of where we're at right now, is with the trade of the number one pick. The Bears, Ryan Poles between this year and next year has so much ammunition going into this. where whether that's on draft day where he wants to move up or move down because someone is on his board that he wants to go up and get, obviously that under the previous regime kind of happened with the Justin Fields, where you weren't expecting him to slide as far as he was, and the Bears were able to adjust their board and go up and get. Wouldn't surprise me if something like that happens again for the Bears this year. But the other thing I want to bring up here, we're talking about, veterans on teams and cap space. I mentioned Mike B had talked to me about DeForest Buckner, but Ryan Jensen, center down in Tampa. Tampa's in horrific cap shape. The guy that, has been rumored to potentially be a cap casualty or on the trade block where you might be able to get him for a pick. That's the one thing about the NFL is you're able to get some of these veterans at a much lower trade cost than you sometimes think you're going to be able to do. Hub, do you think, despite the fact that Ryan Poles so far has shown a blueprint of wanting these guys to be young, if something like that, though, does open up on the cheap, that would cause him to kind of, maybe break that pattern and do something like that, take that chance?
I'd go a little further than that, Kyle, is that if I'm Ryan Poles, if he thinks that player can make a key difference for Justin Fields this year, then you do it. If that's something that he's missing in order to take the next step, and it's even just for this year, for 2 years, sure, why not? I don't think they'd want to pay what they're going to have to pay him to be on the roster for the next 3 or 4 years, but you never know. And I don't know the specifics of his contract. I'd have to look at how much of it is guaranteed and, what they'd really be dealing with. And because the price wouldn't be much. I mean, nobody is going to pay a second or third round pick to get that contract,
right.
So I wouldn't rule it out, but only if you think that making a big move at the center position is key to giving Justin Fields the chance to be who they want Justin Fields to be. Because, something else I was thinking about unrelated to that, as you were asking the question, but you mentioned, the trade and the draft picks. To me, one of the best things that Poles did in trading that number 1 overall pick is he now has 2 number 1 picks next year, which are most likely going to be top 10 picks. Certainly top 12. One of them, maybe it's the Panthers. Who knows? If they're playing a rookie quarterback, which they're going to be.
I would be shocked if the Panthers weren't a top 10 pick.
I think it could be number 3 or number 4 or number 5. And if Justin Fields, there are no negatives with Justin Fields right now. There just shouldn't be any negatives with him right now. But the reality is he was the worst passing quarterback in the NFL this year. If he is not a top 16 quarterback at the end of this season, then the Bears have to look very hard at getting their quarterback next year. And they've got what they need to do it. And that's something else that's going to evolve over the season. And I everything I've seen about Justin Fields, as a young man, as a leader, I'm impressed. I hope it works out for him. I really do. But the reality is that 75 to 80% of these first round quarterbacks fail. And we've seen nothing yet to tell us that he isn't going to be normal, one of the 75 to 80%.
Well, and that's why I think it was so important to go out and get DJ Moore in that trade, to get a guy you can rely on and a guy who has proven that he can play in this league and that he can put up big numbers. And, Justin Fields didn't, especially when Darnell Mooney was out last year, didn't really have that consistent outlet for him to throw to when things got a little crazy in the pocket. And I think DJ Moore can be that person.
Guys, real quick, there's one other thing about Ryan Poles that nobody's talking about right now, but it's going to be a measuring stick. He did make the trade for Claypool. It doesn't look like a good deal right now. When Claypool was drafted and his first couple of years in the league, he was exciting. If he stays healthy this year and he becomes a quality number 2, to go with Moore as number 1, I mean, suddenly things are looking a lot differently at the wide receiver group.
Yeah, I mean, that would be huge. I mean, on paper, for what you expected Chase Claypool to be, as you said, Hub coming out of college those first couple of years, and when the Bears traded for him, I expected to see a pretty decent version of Claypool. Not right away. I understood that it was going to take a while. But I attributed a lot of what was happening with the dysfunction of the Pittsburgh offense more than him. And I left last year concerned, but on paper, with Mooney coming back healthy, Claypool, the addition of a player like DJ Moore, who is still an ascending wide receiver, Cole Kmet finally breaking out last year with 7 touchdowns, probably going to get an extension at some point this season. I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears add another tight end.
Oh, they have to.
Yeah, another legit pass catching tight end to this roster. They look like they're going to have the type of core around Justin Fields that he needs to take that next step in the passing game. And I really believe that's going to happen. I am really high on my outlook for Justin Fields, but Hub, I don't think it should be, I think you're doing a really good job of stressing it. Them having 2 first-round picks, particularly that Carolina pick that could be a top 5 pick, if the Bears don't see what they need to out of Justin Fields this year, they are in incredible position to be able to rectify that while still having a young core in place around a different young quarterback.
Yeah, well, again, that's why we started talking about it, a month or 2 ago. It was obvious. I hope it's not necessary. What everybody needs to understand about Justin Fields, physically, he has the tools. There's no question about that. He may be the best running quarterback in the NFL in a league which has finally gone to running quarterbacks, but you still have to be an elite passer. We have seen the arm strength. We've seen the ability to put the ball in the air. What we have not seen is any sign that he has the quarterback intelligence. And I'm not talking about him being smart or dumb. I'm not saying he's dumb in any way. This isn't about smart or dumb. This is a feel that the Bradys and the Rodgers and the Mahomes and these guys have, that they're born with, that they see and react to things in ways that other great quarterbacks can't. And we don't know if Fields can or not. And that's what the Bears have to learn about him this year.
See, I disagree slightly that we've seen. I wouldn't say we've seen no signs. There are several moments and several stretches, almost complete games where I feel that you saw improvement in terms of his ability to read the field and react in a timely manner. I think it's still too inconsistent, but I do think it's getting better. Sean, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I do think there were moments where he showed those abilities. And, I always think back to a play against Atlanta where he pointed David Montgomery where to run. And he was rolling out of the pocket and pointing him downfield and threw a beautiful pass. There's little examples like that. But I will agree that it has to be more. He has to show more. And I think the Bears are doing the right things in bringing in the proper pieces, particularly – as we've said, with those pass catchers that they have now that you add DJ Moore to the mix, I think that they're going to know by the end of this year. We will know if Justin Fields is the guy or not, and that's both exciting and maybe a little bit scary if you're a Bears fan.
Hubby, got anything else on that, or you want to move on?
No, I mean, I think that improvement is fine, but I'm not talking about improvement. I'm talking about whether he's got those special gifts, and I haven't seen any sign of those special gifts. Nor do you usually see it in any quarterback in his first full year as a starter. His second year in the league. So it's not a question of I'm saying he can or he can't. I'm just reminding everybody that we don't know yet. And we're going to know at the end of this. We're not going to see a fully developed, fully grown Justin Fields at the end of this season. But if they're the 32nd ranked passing team in the league again, then you better be really concerned. And even if they're 20th or 25th, that's not good enough, and so that's what you got. And now, as Sean just pointed out, nobody's going to say he doesn't have the tools, and well, I mean, one isn't enough. Hopefully Claypool becomes who we think he can. Hopefully they stay healthy. I'm sure they're going to draft another quarterback. I don't know where or when. Not quarterback, but wide receiver. They may draft another quarterback too. They could do it this year. Everything's on the table. People have to remember when Tom Brady came in the 6th round. And where these guys come from.
I'd like them to take a quarterback in the mid to late rounds.
Yeah, they should. The kid who's probably going to be the 49er starter this year, was he a 7th round or 6th round?
He was 7th.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy. Yeah.
I mean, you take another body because it's not like they have somebody as their number 2 who they can't do without, So they may very well.
Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant. He was the very last pick.
That's what I thought. Yeah, and he may turn out to be Mr. Irrelevant. I mean, 6 games and doing well was fine. Now we'll see what happens because he's probably going to be the guy at the start of the year. They're in a positive place having Justin Fields right now with the skills that he's shown and where he's at. This is the year that they got to figure it all out, and that's obviously what Ryan Poles is working towards.
I think the best way I can kind of piggyback that off that is at the end of this year, is he trending towards Josh Allen or is he trending towards Kyler Murray? Because, it's a big difference when you pay those guys, and we're seeing.
I don't know if anybody can trend towards Kyler Murray. He's got his own issues.
Yeah, I mean, there's an entire other set. I'm talking about in terms of.
I know what you mean.
I mean, in terms of maturity, Justin Fields and Kyler Murray are not even in the same building. I'm talking about in terms of on-field processing. Like Josh Allen, he's the improvement in his playmaking ability is incredible. But at some point, they have 2 more years on Justin Fields' contract after that. But you're starting to think about those contracts. You just saw what Daniel Jones got paid, and that was one of those things where I understand with the improvement that you saw out of Daniel Jones, it's hard to want to reset that clock. But Hub, as you were saying, like that is far from a sure thing that they just invested in. And if you end up in a situation with like Justin Fields, where, it's an improvement, but it's not a sure thing, and you have those picks, I get exactly where you're coming from.
I just love the fact that they put themselves in a position that if they have to do something they don't want to do, they're in a position to do it really well. And I will tell you guys, I'm looking at this now, and I would rather have Justin Fields than Bryce Young, but I'm not sure that I'd rather have Justin Fields than C.J. Stroud or Anthony Anderson. I'm just not sure yet. Because of what I've seen so far, and I've seen less of those 2 than I've seen of Justin Fields. But that's, to me, that's what makes all this so much fun. Is the very best at drafting don't get it right, 80% of the time, let alone 100% of the time. But this is what they're trying to figure out right now. I do like what we've learned in the last few weeks or month or 2 about the way that both Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus are approaching this, what their priorities are, what they think are the most important things they're looking for. That to me has been impressive as we get to learn more about them heading into just their second seasons.
I had a lot of questions and comments in here, guys. It's great. Once again, thank you for joining us, everyone, this afternoon. If you are on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment. We really appreciate it. Help people find the show. And also make sure you go over to shawlocal.com, keeping track of everything that's happening in free agency with the Bears over there. But someone had asked about the possibility of 4 quarterbacks going in those top 9 picks or top 8 picks before the Bears would pick at number 9, Hub. Do you think, from what you're hearing from NFL teams, I know it's a long way away from draft day still, I didn't think 4 was really in the cards. I thought probably only 2, maybe 3 top, but have you heard anything?
It depends on who you talk to. Levis is number 4, and I can't see him going in the top 10. Somebody's got to really think that they see something that others don't see. As I said, Anderson, until he got to the combine, is another one who there was a lot of questions, and suddenly now I've talked to a couple guys who think he could be the first one, because he's got the size and that kind of ability. The only thing with Bryce Young is his size. There's no other criticisms that I'm hearing about him. And then you get to CJ Stroud. I find Stroud fascinating because he followed Fields at Ohio State, and I'm not that means anything. But I think that 3 in the top 10 is a likelihood. I'll be surprised if all 4 go in the top 10.
All right. Hitting 50 minutes here. I want to make sure we hit on Montgomery. I want to hit on Jalen Carter. And then, guys, anything else in the chat If you have any other questions outside of those two things you want to hit on quickly, I can't promise we'll get to all of them. But let's start with Monty signing the contract last night with the Detroit Lions. Bears did add Travis Homer, former Seattle Seahawks running back. I don't really see that as anything more than a special teams piece. Sean, where do you think the Bears go at the running back position from here?
Yeah, Travis Homer is more of a good backup running back and a special teams guy. I mean, obviously, this is going to be Khalil Herbert's going to be involved. He's going to be, if not the number one guy. I imagine if the Bears are probably going to draft somebody, and it can be whether it's a tag team with Herbert and a rookie, or whoever winds up showing the most in training camp. I don't see them spending big money. Well, obviously they aren't spending big money. They wouldn't pony up the money for David Montgomery, who 3 years, 18 million, by the way. So that's a little bit less than even I thought. I mean, Kyle,
it's hard out there for running backs.
It's hard. We were talking about, that 8 million would be a bargain. 8 million a year for a guy like David Montgomery would be in that range. And he wound up settling for even less than that. And so it's tough out there. Yeah, you're right. And the Bears could have paid that if they wanted to keep him. But clearly that wasn't the priority. And I don't think that they're going to spend big on a running back. I think this is much more likely to be a running back in the draft, maybe second, third round, maybe day 3 somewhere.
Guys, I constantly worry these days whether I read something wrong or I forgot something or there was something. But what I looked at a little while before we went on is that Homer has 83 carries in 4 seasons. Now, if I'm wrong, if that was this past year, then that's completely different. But that's what it said. And if that's the case, that tells you everything you need to know. He's a backup and a special teams player. So let's cross that off the list.
Which those are important guys to have, yes, but he's not running back,
Not criticizing the signing. I'm just saying he wasn't signed to be a factor as a running back. And if he can be, then that would be wonderful. It's happened before, but I don't think that's what they're thinking. I think Khalil Herbert proved enough that he should start the season as your number 1 running back and see if he can do the job or not in every way, not just averaging 5.4 or whatever it was per carry. I really thought they were going to keep Montgomery, and I'm surprised based on what the Lions gave him that they didn't. And because I kept hearing how much they liked him in the locker room, on the field, as a leader, as a team member, and as a running back. And that's why you always have to be careful with everything you hear from these guys, as you build towards this. They clearly have to draft a running back. They come in every round, and there will be plenty in the 3rd and the 5th and the 7th or whatever. There's going to be, another guy or two, but I'm not worried right now about starting the season with Khalil Herbert as my number 1, as long as I know that, if he doesn't fix what he needs to fix, that they know that they've got to get something else as well.
They certainly are going to have to draft a running back. I know that we had a question earlier about Bijan Robinson. Always forget how to say his first name. I'm seeing him as a potential top 10 pick. I don't think that the Bears would take him at number 9. But I wanted to hit on free agency, or who left out there. I completely agree with you. When Sean, I believe on Friday, when we talked about Montgomery, we said 8 million would be a bargain. And for everything Hub just said and the cost, I would have thought that was someone that they would have brought back at that cost. They have to have some sort of an idea. And you looked through free agency, I saw, a couple guys that signed recently back with Miami, and Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert, a couple guys that come from a similar style offense, haven't been in San Francisco and down there with Mike McDaniels. I thought those were guys that would be interesting for the Bears. There's not a lot of names left in free agency I feel like fit the mold that would complement Khalil Herbert. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Chad, because guys are flying off all over the board. I think Jerick McKinnon is still available. And the other guy in free agency that I think performed actually pretty well when he got his chance down in Carolina, a guy that struggled to stay on the field because of injury, but was a pretty high draft pick, was Donta Foreman, who's back on the market. he's someone I wouldn't mind taking a flyer on, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, there's guys out there. Miles Sanders, too, is still out there. Obviously, he's probably going to cost more than those other two guys you mentioned. I just, based on everything we've seen from Ryan Poles and knowing where he comes from in Kansas City, where they haven't the last several years haven't spent a whole lot of money on running backs. I have a hard time seeing them going out and getting one of those guys just because I feel like they want to keep this cheap. And that to me points toward drafting somebody. Certainly it's not impossible. I mean, yeah, there's some guys out there who could potentially fit what they want to do. But I don't know if I see them doing that.
Any first round pick is a heavy price for a running back.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality of it over the years, unless it's Walter Payton, or unless there's, the guy who's a 2-time winner of the MVP, whatever it may be. You can get these guys. And again, we have to remember what the Bears are trying to accomplish right now. I assume they're being realistic about it, but even being realistic about it, it doesn't change or diminish the fact that they were number one in the league running the football this year. They can have a good year and improve a lot of things without fixing the running back position. I just don't think it's their major priority right now. Obviously, fans want everything. You want to go to the Super Bowl this year. I understand that. But as we work through this and say what's going to get them to being a contender for the Super Bowl the quickest, worrying about the running back right now just isn't part of it. And I think they'll add a couple bodies. One of them may even be exciting, but they're not going to be expensive, and they're not going to be first or second, probably even third round picks.
I think Triple R is checking in here, Sean, on some roster decision for the Bears. I'm believing this is Mustipher, Borders, Evans, and White are free agent. No tenders given to them. So that's Sam Mustipher, Darrington Evans, I'm guessing. I can't remember
Borders.
Breon Borders. White is completely escaping me.
Yeah, but so he's right. I mean, like, they haven't tendered Sam Mustipher, which they would have done by now if they were bringing him back. You still got Lucas Patrick under contract. And, we really never got to see him play center except for like a quarter in that New England game.
The chat is going to start throwing things at you for even mentioning that.
But I don't think they're bringing back Sam Mustipher because I think they would have done that already.
Yeah. All right. So let's hit on Jalen Carter quickly. I believe it was Triple R who had asked about him. Apologies if it wasn't, though. Hub, obviously, I believe you guys hit on Jalen Carter already while I was gone. You guys did one down from Indianapolis. Jalen Carter has gone on to have a pretty poor pro day. Any update there for what you're hearing in league circles? Have they figured out how teams are going to approach this?
I think the easy part, Jalen Carter was the best defensive lineman and possibly the best player in the draft until the news broke. So his pro day isn't a major factor right now. Everything that's gone on since, I mean, it's not, you're not happy about it, but that in itself isn't going to kill him for me, because anybody who's thinking about it, he's going to have a lot more workouts. People are going to get plenty of time to see if he's the real deal. That part of it is fine. What is not good news is that the way he handled this with the release that he gave, in which he basically denied having done anything wrong. He basically said none of it's true. When the truth comes out, he didn't get indicted by doing nothing wrong. And so I just don't know, if he's helped himself in how he handled this publicly. It's really going to come down to meeting with various teams, GMs, and coaches, and proving what kind of man he is. He's probably going to be a very good football player, but I don't think we know. I think we probably know less rather than more what we knew about his situation at the combine. And I don't think you can afford to risk the number 9 pick in the draft on him until you know a lot more. I don't know if I'm answering the question, but it's the best I got right now.
I completely understand the thing. So he's indicted, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong on this, none of them are felonies. They're
I think
misdemeanor
they're
charges.
misdemeanors so
They're
far.
misdemeanor
It's 2
charges.
misdemeanors.
So,
Yeah.
so I think my guess is he's being advised, not because he's worried about the law in particular, since they're only misdemeanors. I'm guessing he's being advised to take that route because being open about it and saying, hey, I screwed up, would open him up to civil court lawsuits. So that's another layer. I wonder if what his reps and what he's saying to teams behind closed doors is a different tune than what he'll say publicly.
See, guys, what I'm suggesting is not that he should have said more or said different. I don't think he should have said anything. He had to make a statement, and his statement should have been, it's a legal matter right now. The pros are dealing with it. My lawyers are dealing with it. I hope you all understand. I feel horrible about what happened. People died. What could be worse in the world? But as far as, my part in it and the legal stuff, please just give it a chance to evolve. It should have stopped there. And I think he would have been in a lot better place than basically making the statement that he did, which is that most of this isn't true. In essence, that's how I read his statement. And I don't think that did him any favors. So that's the problem I have with it.
No, that's definitely how it read, Hub. I mean, yeah, you could have, they certainly could have said a whole bunch of nothing with that statement. And that's not what they chose. I'll say this, if I'm the Bears and he drops to 9, I don't care. I'm staying away. I think there's just too many red flags. And, the pro day thing, reportedly showed up 8 or 9 pounds heavier than he was at the combine a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, that's not a good look, but that isn't, it doesn't matter a whole lot. This was already, the red flags were already there for me. And I don't care if he's there at 9. I don't think the Bears should take him.
I guess I'm having a hard time reading what NFL teams are going to do because he's such an elite talent. Like in a normal situation, if he had fallen to like 5 or 6 and after the Bears, had traded down to 9, I would be yelling at the TV for them to go up and get him. If he was there at 9, man, it's really hard to say no to that type of talent because it's still the end. Like someone's going to do it. And as long as you do your homework, and I'm sure the Bears have had some bad experiences in this area lately over the last 5 or 6 years. I'm guessing, the McCaskey family wouldn't sign off on it but in particular, like if this does cause him to drop down, like it's like 23, 24, and he's still on the board, one of those scenarios, at that point, I think teams would have to be scrambling to take that chance, right? As long as they've done their homework.
As far as what they know of him as a football player, absolutely. I think the Bears have to seriously consider it at 9, based on what we know of him as a football player, and depending on how he works out the next month, what kind of shape he's in, this and that. But there is one other aspect that we haven't mentioned, and I'm going to need some help on this because when this was happening, I was spending all my time in the hospital. But my recollection is that as good a few weeks as Ryan Poles has had right now, early on last year, as he was getting started, he made 1 or 2 other mistakes on players who turned out to have some problems off the field, didn't he? Am I remembering that properly?
Are you referring to when like 3 different Bears got arrested last summer?
That isn't what I was thinking of, but that is the kind of thing I'm talking about. I think that he has to be careful. Everybody has to be careful. But I think early on in his stage and with what he has to work with, he cannot afford to pay strongly for Carter and have him turn out to be a bad human being. That would be a big lose for him. And so there may be a little more concern with the Bears than some other teams. But I think, I don't want to not answer the question. For everybody who's listening, Jalen Carter is one of the 4 or 5 best players in this draft. I mean, that's why they played 2 or 3 years of college football. We knew that. That hasn't changed. I mean, what he did in school happened, and so now you just have to figure out what kind of risk you're taking with an extremely valuable draft pick.
It's one of the more fascinating, an unfortunate, fascinating storyline, but it's definitely one of the more fascinating I can remember pre-draft in recent history here. One, because of the circumstances involved, the level of talent involved, and also really for the first time, I do feel like the NFL has been held a bit more accountable. Still not to the point where they should be held accountable, but public perception is not as high for the NFL as maybe it was 3 or 4 years ago. And I'm interested to see how NFL teams, are if the way they manage risk is changing.
Guys, what I personally am praying for is that it turns out, once we have all the information, that Jalen Carter is guilty of nothing but unsafe driving, which every kid his age, including me 100 years ago, is responsible for. I mean, and if that's the way it plays, that's what I really hope, because I have no reason to believe that he's a bad human being. But there is a lot we don't know. And if it turns out that one or two or three of the things that he did do did have a bigger impact on what ended up in the death of two people, you have to be so careful with that. And that's the battle that all 32 teams, I'm sure, are looking at right now.
Sean, you got anything we haven't talked about you want to hit on?
Well said, Hub. No, I mean, I think we've kind of touched on a little bit of everything. If you guys have anything else in the chat, let us know. Any other last questions here before we get out of here?
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly check and see if any kind of news is broken while we're on here. See if there's anything else to talk about.
Well, I can tell you that Ryan Poles is talking tomorrow morning.
Ryan Poles is talking tomorrow morning.
Yeah,
that's
and
awesome.
DJ Moore is on the schedule.
Nice.
So we'll have that for you guys tomorrow.
Here.
I guess we didn't mention it. It is one of the bigger stories in the NFL right now. Aaron Rodgers did finally confirm earlier today that he does hope to play for the New York Jets. It seems pretty obvious to me that he's trying to force the trade on the Packers right now, and the Packers are stalling because they're trying to get as much as they can. And so it may still not happen, but it does seem like that's going to be a done deal in the next couple of days.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, that we hadn't talked about that. Friend had texted me the odds to the NFC North currently. I can't even remember. One of the online sports books, right? And the Detroit Lions were currently the favorite to win the NFC North. This was, I believe, after kind of the first initial wave of free agents signed or, confirmed deals on Monday evening for updated odds. I believe it was like plus 120. The Bears were at like plus 350. And he was asking if he thought, if he waited, if he could get better odds on the Bears. The Bears odds have already started to drop a little bit. I think it was down to plus 320, he said there. So what I guess I'm saying is, one, Vegas liking the Bears moves, but two, now with Aaron Rodgers leaving the division, like, I like this, what the Detroit Lions have put together, but like, I think that's far from a team that is, a heavy favorite or anything. That I just feel like this is going to be a really weird division, guys.
Well, it's not a very good division, and the one team we didn't mention is easily the best team, which is the Minnesota Vikings. So
where were they on that list, Kyle? Were they third?
They were second, I want to say.
Okay.
Why? I mean, what have they done wrong?
I am mystified by that as well.
I thought so too, but I don't know. I guess I gave Vegas some credit. They're usually pretty good. Detroit, young team, but I don't know. I'll say this. I have not been impressed with what the Quasi. I'm blanking on the. Thank you. So I didn't butcher that. I have not been impressed with his tenure so far.
I'm sorry, with which tenure now?
Up in Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
The Vikings GM. Yeah, I mean, it's much like Ryan Poles. It's still early, but he's made some interesting choices, especially with those trade backs last year.
I think he ended up in a tough spot because I think they were a lot better last season than anybody expected them to be.
Than anybody expected, yeah. I'd agree with that.
And that puts significant additional pressure on him. to me, the defending champ is always at least, one of the key teams. I mean, the Lions got better as the season went on, but they didn't impress the heck out of me. I mean, and I think the Packers, assuming that Rodgers does go to the Jets or gets traded, the Packers could be the Bears in 2023. I mean, they've got to look at a rebuild. They hope they already have their quarterback. That's why they're trading Rodgers, but they don't know. And you look at that team the first half of the season compared to, they did get better in the second half of the season as Rodgers finally played a little better. But I think that the NFC North is going to be one of the weaker divisions in the NFL, and who knows, it could be the weakest. I don't know. It could go the other way. The Vikings could be in the right direction. The Lions could be getting better, and the Bears could make more increase than we know. Again, trying to do this stuff. I understand people bet and they want to get their bets now. This is one of the many reasons that I don't bet, because I hate the losing a lot more than I enjoy the winning. But, it's just too soon.
All right, guys, let's get out of here. Thank you, everyone who joined us today. It's been a blast talking with everyone, seeing all the questions and comments coming to the chat. It's good seeing all of you guys, all the regulars and all the newcomers, everyone watching on Facebook. If you're on YouTube, once again, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channels, leave a comment, and then head over to shawlocal.com because we got a lot of stuff coming for you. As I said, Hubba column going up tonight with Ryan Poles speaking tomorrow. We'll have a lot of reaction out of Hallis Hall from DJ Moore as well. Stick right there at shawlocal.com. For Sean Hammond and Hub Arkush, I am Kyle Nabors. We will talk to you guys again soon.